privilege to share. As I was coming here or thinking about today, I was thinking, what aspect of my story am I going to share? Identity has been a theme that has been pervasive through my whole walk with God. And even before meeting Christ, not knowing my identity, not knowing who I am, not having a sense of direction. So I'll just kind of share as the Lord leads me. And I have a few scriptures that I want to leave you all with today. And feel free to ask me any questions that you have. So my name is Ify. I'm 26. I'm going to be 27 in like 2 weeks. I can't wait, March the 11th. And by God's grace, I'm a wife. I've been married for 12 months now. And that's been 13 months actually. That's been amazing. It's been a beautiful journey. And God has just been blessing and keeping us. It was mentioned that I lead a ministry for women in the UK called Love Limitless. And we just empower, equip, give people the tools that they need to move forward in their knowledge of God and in their knowledge of who He calls them to be. I love the theme identity because everything stems from your identity. If you do not know who you are, you cannot do anything. If you have no sense of who God has called you to be in Him, then everything else is futile. And I think, unfortunately, identity is the area where most of us, as women and men of God, we struggle. We don't get it right. For myself, I grew up in a household. Both of my parents were married at the time. I was born in Nigeria. I came here when I was 1 or 2, and my dad was already living here. I have 4 siblings, an older brother, a younger brother, and a younger sister. There's 4 of us, boy, girl, boy, girl. And it was a very hostile environment for most of my childhood. There was a lot of arguments and disagreements. It was quite a loveless home. My parents eventually went on to split when I was 12, and they divorced, and that was a very, very challenging time for me as a person, where I didn't necessarily experience the security that comes from a household with 2 parents. And I think more than anything, I think one thing that God has been adding back to my life in the past few years is just understanding that His standard and His order for family, that God did create for there to be a man in the home as the leader of the home and a woman within the home as his support. And these things are so vital for the flourishing of children. And in absence of that, God's grace is always available. God lavishes us, and I believe I'm a product of that grace when my parents eventually did split. But I found myself in this very interesting place in my preteen years and my teenage years where I had no idea who I was. My relationship with my dad was very estranged, and we didn't get along that well. And I had no sense of real identity and like, God, who am I? I found myself being bullied in secondary school. I found myself being a bully in secondary school because sometimes the victims are the perpetrators. And I had this kind of facade of being very, very hard on the outside, but I'll go home and I'll feel suicidal. I would want to self-harm, sometimes attempted to self-harm. And I was just struggling so much in my identity. I was very, very timid on the inside. I came in contact with God when I was 15, in the States actually. I was in Florida. I went for an event. We went to go visit family, myself and my older brother. My mum sent us there on our summer holiday. And I remember for the first time just seeing young people worship God and serve God. And I was like, wow, these people are my age. We're all 15 or thereabout, and I'm seeing people lifting their hands in worship. And I think that was the first time I really had a revelation of, whoa, these people have something that I don't have, and I want what they have. Because I grew up in church, but it was hard to even get the youth group to move. Nobody wants to talk, everybody is stiff, nobody's engaging with the word, it's just going over our heads. But in America, I just found this sense of, wow, people actually love God, at least they look like they love Him, and I believe them. And I became discontent, and I think it was in that process that God was really wooing my heart to want more of Him and to want to know His heart. So I made the decision at 15 to give my life to Christ, and I saw so many ideologies of the old just really slip away. I didn't battle with like suicide or self-harm. I wasn't battling with insecurities in terms of my physical self. I just saw these things begin to disappear, and I found how God was strengthening me more in becoming more courageous about sharing the truth of His word in my life. It's been a journey. I don't think that there was ever just one time where I can say, that's it, I found my identity, I know who I am in Christ, end of the story. Every season comes with it's almost like God is adding, like a new stone is being added to this wall of who I am, to this building of who He's called for me to be. In different seasons, I found God telling me that, daughter, your relationship with your father is not an excuse for you to treat men a certain way or think of men a certain way. I found God revisiting that in my foundation and saying, let's deal with that. So I found my identity in Christ is something that I believe I've had to grow into the fullness of, and I'm still growing into the fullness of it where I am presently. But God has been so merciful along the way. The scripture that I wanted to read to us quickly is 1 Peter 2. 1 Peter 2, I love this scripture. Most of us know it from verse 9, but I'm just going to read it from verse 1 to verse 10. It says, so put away all malice and all deceit and all hypocrisy and envy and all slander. Like newborn infants, long for the spiritual milk, that by it you may grow up into salvation, if indeed you have tasted that the Lord is good. As you come to him, a living stone rejected by men, but in the sight of God, chosen and precious. You yourselves, like living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. And I'll just stop there for now, but the Bible refers to us as a priesthood. And when you think about the